was actually born in Busan and then adopted by my parents in Iowa and pretty much lived there my whole life till I was like 23. And then that's when I came over to Korea, to search for my birth mother. Yeah, growing up was like hard for me, right? Because like I didn't have any Korean friends. I mean, everybody around me was like white people because it's in the middle of Iowa. In high school, I was kind of like made fun of a lot just because like I couldn't say the letter R. So I never talked. I didn't have a lot of friends. I always was getting in trouble, had like a 1.6 GPA. So the reason I got like such a low GPA like my first year is because I never participated in class, right? My palms were sweaty and I hated like reading in front of class, doing public speeches. So I always just kept things very brief and short. And so I think it was that. And then also just because like, I looked a little bit different and like spoke a little bit different that I was like, I kind of like a misfit, didn't fit in until I found like breakdancing. And then everything changed and everyone thought I was cool. A friend of mine gifted me this breakdance DVD, How to Breakdance by Mike Garcia, I think it was called. And I just started watching it, fell in love with it, and started, practicing and practicing and, working and working. And I met other like people that did it like at other schools and actually was a participant on So You Think You Can Dance later on. Very brief, like made it to round 4 audition LA. So dance really changed my life and it became my life for several years. So it was always my dream to like come back and just like learn about my culture and meet Korean friends, try Korean food, try to find my birth parents. So it was always a dream of mine to just like come to Korea and explore and learn about my roots. During college, like I made a 5-year plan and first year was like I wanted to like give back and help refugees and second year was like I wanted to find my birth mother and go back to Korea. Right after college, yeah, I did the volunteer work and then actually, I met a North Korean refugee while I was volunteering 30 hours a week at this place called World Relief. And my boss was like, Zach, you should come in and meet this woman, she's from North Korea. And she just kind of, poured out her heart and shared her story. And she was actually the one who like really inspired me to go back to South Korea and find my roots and try to find my mom. And so I would say that was that moment that I was just like, okay, this is where I'm gonna go next. And that following year, yeah, I just moved to Korea. In the beginning, it felt super weird, right? Because again, like I grew up in Iowa, I never like had any Korean friends. I never like had like knew any Korean people until I moved out of Iowa and then searched for my mom and met my mom in Busan. In the beginning, it was weird, but also cool. I was like, like these are my people. These like I finally sort of felt like at home and at peace, like where I could just be me. A lot of like different culture shocks. I was just like, yo, like as soon as I arrived to like Busan, I was like, yo, I've never seen so many Korean people before. It was kind of a weird, awkward feeling at first. And then one was just like the Jjimjilbangs, right? I've never experienced that before and being naked with a bunch of dudes. But at the time, it was like a little bit weird, but I was just like, sometimes you just gotta embrace the awkwardness and the weirdness and just like go with it. I remember just, certain times, just like in the taxi rides or just trying to be like order food at restaurants, people would almost get mad at me because I didn't speak Korean. And so it was kind of like, it was rough, like during the first half of the year, just because it's culture shock. But eventually things got better. I learned like a little bit of Korean to just kind of get by. And then, I had a really good time. I moved to Busan like beginning of like 2010, and then I contacted my adoption agency, Holt International. I had some meetings with them, filled out a bunch of papers and stuff, and then they started, doing the search. The whole time, like I was just like super anxious. I was like, man, when is this gonna happen? Is this gonna ever happen? Like my visa and my school year was almost up. It was like the last week of like my contract that I got an email from my adoption agency saying, Zach, we found your mom. Like, when can you come to Seoul? And I was like, tomorrow. Booked a train, KTX, all the way to Seoul. Got to the room, and I was like, aren't you gonna prepare me? Like, what do I say to my mom? And they're like, oh, just go in. So I just opened the door, they pushed me in, and she ran up to me, gave me a hug. She was like, "I love you, son. I've been praying, wishing, hoping that you'd come back someday." And yeah, I just felt just, so good and so happy. And it's like a really like a dream come true. I've been wanting to meet her forever, and it happened. Yeah, I was feeling a bunch of different emotions, like just a lot of excitement and nervousness. I didn't know how she was gonna like respond and like react and stuff, but she just, embraced me, and she was there with a friend, and everyone was like um crying and just happy and laughing. And at the same time it was like that was cool, but then also like we had the translators there, so it did feel a little bit weird trying to communicate and talk back and forth. But yeah, still like one of the best days of my life. All I simply said to my mom when I met her was like, "I love you too." I try not to think so much and think about the past or think about like what happened or what could have happened or dwell on it. The easy part was actually finding her. Like they said, because she actually wanted to be found. Some people, they disappear, they become like ghosts. They don't want anything to do with you. So I'm very grateful and blessed that she actually wanted to build a relationship with me. And so now the hard part, the challenging part, is just building that genuine relationship, learning the language, the culture, spending time, creating memories together. Like that's what I've been working on now. Building relationships can be tricky, right? Especially like when you're trying to do it long distance. We were doing like phone calls and Skypes and stuff like that, but I was just like, if I really want to build a relationship with my mom, I gotta be there, be with her, and create memories and try new foods and experiences. Have some beautiful moments together. So that's when I just decided, like, after finding her, I moved back to Iowa, doing that long distance thing. I was like, this is not working. And then I moved to Daejeon, South Korea, and took a position as like an RA, residential advisor, at an international school in Daejeon. So I could be closer to my mom and spend more time with her. So after my experience in like Busan and teaching English for a year and finding my mom, like definitely came back like different person, just like bigger, like wider perspective and more open to the world. I actually thought like it was funny. I thought like I could just check my mom off the list, like my little bucket list or like my 5-year plan. But what I learned is that people are more important than things. You can't just cross them off the list, and move on to the next thing. It's really about building a genuine relationship, and you can only do that by pouring in the time, the energy, and positive deposits into each other's life. Yeah, it was a good thing, and I'm happy I did it. My name is Zach Benson. This is my Korean American story.